Hello and welcome to a stream since months. Okay, I think the connection is back. At least I just got the message in Flight Simulator, that green pop-up. Successfully connected. Let's check in the other apps, because Navigraph, yes, needs a connection. It is online. And everything else seems to work as well. So far, so good. Now let me quickly check if Stream Elements bot actually is working correctly. It should answer to a command like that, in theory. At least I know the command is shown in Stream Elements. Okay, it does answer, but it can't read the stream time. Okay, however, whatever. Those are the rather unimportant things. So, definitely back in business. Flight from Brest Airport to Dublin in the lovely PMDG DC-6B, the passenger version of the aircraft. I already did the paperwork, the planning bit, so this is more about the actual flight. But let me quickly show you what that flight will look like. It's plotted in Navigraph charts here nicely. So we are taking off of the actual airport, head north to the first VOR, which is Land's End. After that, I forgot the name, STU, I guess, is the name of the next VOR. Let me quickly check. Strumble VOR. And then Baldonel, that is a little bit off of Dublin. Since we plan to land on runway 16, I want to have plenty space for the final turn to intercept the ILS, or landing course, whatever. I will dial in the ILS to make things as easy as possible. As written in the description of this video, I usually struggle with the descent and also with the final approach, which usually is a rather hectic and panicky mess. Going left and right, up and down like mad. But I checked some of the tutorials yesterday and today, and I hope to achieve a somewhat stabilized approach today. We can hope. Takeoff from Brest Airport. The DC-6B has no radio navigation equipment, so no RNAV procedures. But here in Navigraph I can check all the instrument departures, and I think it was the Norbu 6 Echo, which kind of works, at least in the beginning. It says, well, here you see we will take off of runway 7. Runway heading is 072 degrees. Climb to 800 feet, then turn left to intercept the radial 351 of the VOR down here, Quimper. So I definitely have to dial in that one, and here it is written, Norbu 6 Echo Departure, runway 07 right, climb to 800, turn left, intercept QPR radial 351. And then those two, RB004 and Norbu, are both RNAV, nav 8s. I cannot use them. The only thing that is kind of available is the DME description of RB004, which is DME 41 nautical miles out of that Quimper VOR. But from that on, I pretty much will just use the gyro pilot to turn to 345 degrees until we can dial in the Land's End VOR. And from there, just find our way to the next VOR. So I will keep this page in reach for the frequencies because I was too lazy to actually write them down to prepare everything. Usually you should do that. So in the flight simulator, or first let's have a look at the paperwork. This is what the actual flight plan looks like. It's a flight plan created in SimBrief. The thing that is most interesting for me is the fuel information, which I already scrolled past. Here we go. Here it says block fuel 7,328 pounds. I configured SimBrief for the DC-6B to use pounds instead of kilograms because all the scales in that US-made machine, US-made aircraft are in pounds, of course. So roughly 7,500 pounds of fuel. And the expected takeoff weight will be somewhat 75,000 pounds. So it is a rather lightweight flight, which means I do not have to use the water injection during takeoff. Less stress on the engines and easier to handle. Will speed up much quicker. So in Microsoft Flight Simulator, I did pretty much nothing. I just chose the appropriate aircraft with, of course, the Japan Airlines livery, because it is available and I am member of the virtual airline, Japan Airlines Virtual, and I found out Japan Airlines actually flew that aircraft, so that is a real livery. I still have to contact the developer on flightsim.to if he would be willing to create the other liveries as well, because this one is City of Nagoya, and I'd love to have City of Sapporo. That would be my all-time favorite livery for everything. So, rather unusual flight with a Japan Airlines DC-6B from an airport in Brittany, Brest, to an airport in Ireland, to Dublin. Totally real-life operations. I chose the origin and the destination. No waypoints in between because I just don't care. I just enter the VOR data into the radios and then progress from there. Only thing I configured, not even that. It should be runway 16. But even that, it's not important for this flight. The important thing is the flight conditions. I configured everything to be off. No multiplayer, I won't see any other players, no air traffic, and weather and time will be live. So, seems to be rather cloudy. We'll see if this is a big mistake, but yeah. In doubt, I still have a working ILS on runway 16. So far so good. Let's fire up the actual flight and have a look how it works. By the way, the thing in the upper right corner you see here, where my mouse is circling on this green blinky, that is a neat tool called the pushback helper. Because the pushback in Microsoft Flight Simulator is rather uncomfortable. And this one, you just click where you want to go, you connect the tug, you release the parking brake, and you tell that guy, the pushback truck, where you want to go. The only thing I always have to think of is whether to go left or right. I always try to remember, okay, when I hit left, does the nose or the tail go left? I usually just test and go straight and then correct the direction. So, beautiful aircraft. I'd say let's get into business right away. Flight deck is cold and dark. That is one of the first things I configured in this add-on, in this aircraft, to start in a cold and dark state. Absolutely love all those details, all the gauges, knobs. And still, that tablet is a wonderful idea how to configure and interact with the aircraft. Ground power unit is connected. Well, let's have some eye candy. So let's open the doors. In fact, all the doors. Let's drop the front cabin stairs. And let's call for the main cabin stairs. Front cabin didn't work. Here we go. And you will see what effect those commands have on the aircraft. Let's get down a little bit closer. So this actually is a built-in ladder. It means you can land wherever you want, which is quite realistic because the DC-6B does not require paved runways. It can more or less be used like a bush plane. Hey, Flying Yeti. Welcome. Never used a flight sim. Is it for VFR or IFR? It is kind of a retro IFR. I do not use the GPS with the DC-6B. I only use VOR NDB navigation because I like that ancient navigation. So all doors are open. I love to do that because it just looks absolutely amazing. And the main exit entrance stairs are actually external. So you call for them and they bring it and place it right to the aircraft. Cargo door is open as well. You actually can look into the cargo. But no cargo today. Not, at least not yet. I think, well, let's keep the view like this and take care of fuel and load. So 7,500 pounds fuel, roughly. 7.5. And now let's fill up some passengers and some cargo. So we have, oh no, that was too much. Still too much. I just want to go to 75,000. Roughly. 75,000. That should work. Maintenance, everything okay here. Let's refill all the liquids. I didn't use water injection on my test flight earlier today, so water still is there. Auxiliary oil, well, it was just a short flight, so everything is okay so far. Engine stress visualizer is basically the only display I use nowadays, since I do not use the AFE, the Artificial Flight Engineer, which is a fantastic thing. They configured this bit to actually take care of all the co-pilot and flight engineer tasks, which is rather realistic because the DC-6B is a three-person crew cockpit. You have the captain, you have the co-pilot, and you have the flight engineer, because the workload can be a bit much if you do it all alone. But I like fiddling around with the engines and doing all that stuff, so nowadays I follow the rather unrealistic approach and try to do everything by myself. Flying Yeti got your PPL a few months ago in Canada. Oh, wonderful. Congratulations. That sounds fantastic. Especially in Canada. I think one of the most beautiful things in Canada you can do is float planes and go and hop from all those lakes and land wherever you want. Hey, Dunkelgoldig. For some reason my chat on the main screen didn't connect, so I have to rely on my smartphone, but yeah, works. So I've got myself a checklist, but first let's have a look at cargo. If anything has changed. No. Okay, that would have been... Oh yes, actually, I didn't check back there, but hey, there are some suitcases in there. That's amazing. I didn't check that bit yet, but that looks great. You would expect that from a PMDG add-on, to be honest. Still, it's a nice touch. So let's get things going. So, checklist I found on flightsim.to. This one is by McFly Slim. It's a nice and rather simplistic checklist. I like that approach. Still following this because it has some additional performance data, and I have to get my own tables ready, but then I will add those tables to my own checklist I prepared. It is... Well, let me carefully not spilling water all over the place. I created this one, of course. It's double-sided, but the actual performance data is missing. So that is work in progress. Once I get this ready, I definitely will use this one. Labeled for the company, for the virtual company. Hey Conrad, good afternoon, good to see you. So let's get that flight deck up and running. Circuit breakers. Actually, I do not really check all these. They are back here. We actually can pull each and every of these circuit breakers, which is incredible. I have no failures active, but I definitely will start activating failures and errors in the future, in the not near future. First I have to get really comfortable with the aircraft, but I expect that to be a big change in experience. So only thing I care about is get everything up and running. That means battery and ground power, which is this one, and then use the ground power, which was connected. This is the check light indicating we are actually on ground power. Position lights switch on to steady. I don't need any inner lighting, any cockpit lighting or cabin lighting. Just let people know, please don't smoke, and already put on your seatbelts. Then cockpit preparation, water injection, we don't need those, and if needed they are switched on just before starting the takeoff roll. Propeller emergency de-icing controls, which are these, oops, oh, come, go away, which are these four. They are off and capped. Cowl flap selector switches are in the lower portion of the overhead panel. Over here. They should be open all the way. By the way, the cowl flaps are on the engines. I just opened the two on the left side. So you see them here, they are closed. Everything is flush in the engine. And on the other side, I already opened them, and here you see they are open. So this is how the cowl flaps look like if they are open all the way. And you have to take care of these because during climb the air gets cooler, and you have to check the engine temperature, and you use the cowl flaps to do so. And also the carb heat carburetors you have to take care of as well. So cowl flaps for engine number 3 and 4 need to be open as well. Fuel booster pump circuit breakers are up here. They are covered. They are all on. Fuel booster pump switches should be all off. Main and alternate are all off. That's correct. Cooling turbine switch is over here. It's off. Inverter switches, that provides electrical power to, well, let me see. Yeah. That is electrical power for the instruments, and here we go. You see the liquid indicators just came alive. That's one indication everything works. Auxiliary blower, I already saw that, it's off. Voltage regulator overheat warning light, that would be this one, it's off. Emergency instrument switch, I don't have that. Generators should be on. Those are the generators connected to the engines to provide power in flight as soon as the engines run. All ignition switches should be off, which are these. Heater fuel switch is on the left eyebrow panel. Let's zoom in a little bit. Heater fuel should be all down normal. Well, those are... Well, in fact, all these switches should be down, which is the normal state. Cabin should be on. Airfoil de-icer, heaters and master switch over here is off. Propeller de-icer is off. And carb de-icers are off. Anti-icing fluid quantity we see over here. We don't need it, but it's full. Hydraulic fluid quantity is here, it's full. Water quantity, we don't need water because we do not use water injection during takeoff, but either way, it's full. Fuel quantity, no fuel in the alternate tanks, we don't need it because it's a rather short flight. All in all, we should have somewhat 7,500 pounds, which is, should be correct. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's 18, 19, 19, 18. Yeah, that's fine. Oil quantity looks good. Landing light switches, they are off and retract. You can check here. And also you can check outside because they come out of the wings. I have to go a bit to the left to actually show you where those landing lights are. I think it's this bit over here. You can check later if I remember. When taxiing, you use the landing lights because the DC-6B does not have dedicated taxi lights. So you extract them, you extend them, and then you switch them on, and vice versa. So, landing lights are alright. Engine supercharger switches are low. So the DC-6B does not have turbochargers or things like that. They have superchargers, which get more fuel into the engines when reaching higher altitudes. It's roughly flight level 140, where you switch on the superchargers to actually switch them to high. Cabin pressure regulator. The DC-6B has a pressurized cabin, therefore you have to set your expected cruise altitude. I think if I hold down the shift key, yeah, that goes much faster. Cruise altitude will be flight level 120, which is here we go, 120. Door warning is that correct? Cabin altimeter, cabin pressure. I set cabin pressure, cabin altimeter. I cannot set the cabin altimeter. That button, that dial is without function. Cabin pressure manual control door closed. Over here and capped. Door warning lights. It's these two. Now I have to close the doors. It's done by the ramp manager. Let's remove the stairs. And have a look. There you see front stairs are retracted. Close the cargo hold and the cabin doors. So everything's shut. Now door warning lights are extinguished. So let's proceed. AC voltmeter selector is on the right panel up. Oops, no, I'll just zoom in. Here we are. Engine instruments, which already is the case. DC voltmeter selector to bus, which is the case. That is the one I just accidentally switched. Bus voltage should be normal. Well, you should check all the different circuits and phases. In fact, as far as I know, there are not really failures that occur. Fire extinguisher selector valve and discharge handles should be in forward. These are these here. They definitely are forward. Fire detector system warning lights are up here. I will not check these because it's loud. It's not nice. Usually later on you do the fire detection test as well. And yeah. Cockpit heat control, usually at noon. Windshield heat control as desired. It is up flight level 1 to 0. It's maybe somewhat 0 to 10 degrees. You always can check on the main instrument panel. Where are we? Here. That gauge over here, free air, that is the indication if I need some more windshield heat, if I need some more heat or not. Clocks and altimeters. Well, I don't fly on a network at the moment, so I just hit the key B, and that will set the altimeter accordingly. Done. Clocks. Also don't care about clocks. Hydraulic system bypass control lever should be on. That means down. That's this one here. Auxiliary hydraulic pump selector valve control lever should be on brake, full forward. This one here. Hydraulic system pressure should be 2600 to 3050 psi. The indicator is over here. That doesn't really show anything. I have to flip that switch over here. Now how do I get down there again? No. Oh, here we go. Now get that switch up. And now I should get an indication. You see, already moving. Let's get up a little bit. And pressure should be somewhere between 2600 and 3050 psi. So it should stay somewhere here. Okay, looks good. And the emergency air brake pressure should be roughly 1500 psi, which is the case, this one here. So let's switch off that thing again. Now needle drops, so it is off again. So fuel tank selector valve controls should be full forward on the main tanks. Those are these levers over here, all full forward. Crossfeed should be off full forward, which is the case. Propeller master RPM control lever should be full forward, so that's that white knob, white lever. Engine master controls, Hamilton standard propeller selector switch should be 2 or 3 auto, which is the case. That defines which propeller should be used for prop synchronization, so you don't have imbalances. Throttles should be cracked open, which means 1/10 or 1/4 open. I usually just move them slightly. Okay, that looks good so far. Autopilot should be off. The main autopilot lever is this one. And then you have two modes. You have the gyro pilot, that's for turning left and right, and you have altitude control. This is not actually altitude control, that's altitude hold mode. You have this wheel over here which controls, if that is not active, pitching up and down the aircraft. It is a bit like the trim wheel, but connected to the autopilot, to the gyro pilot. You see here, gyro pilot, you have 3 modes of that autopilot. Gyro pilot means you tell the aircraft to turn left and right and to pitch up and down with these wheels, with these knobs. Then you have localizer. There you configure a VOR and a radial, and the autopilot will follow that radial. And you have approach. That means it can intercept an ILS and also sync on the glide slope. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's rather awkward, but it's very likely that this is just user error. So autopilot servos are disengaged. Parking brake is on. Mixer controls, idle cutoff. All 4 are down. Fuel pressure warning isolation switches are on. I always have to think where they actually are. Here. Okay. They are on. Autopilot servos, I just checked that they are both disengaged. Gyro pilot as well as altitude hold mode. Landing gear control lever should be down and 3 green. Down checked, 3 green checked as well. Trim tabs should be set. Well, to be honest, I do not really trim that much in this aircraft. If I put more cargo into the aircraft, then it will have quite a bit nose up attitude. Well, I can trim down a little bit like this, and then it's easier during the takeoff roll. You don't have to push on the yoke. Yeah, you have to push less on the yoke. Carburetor air temperature controls should be cold. Those are the 4 blue levers over here. They are all down. Wing flap lever up. That's the yellow thing over here, which is in the up position. Radio check. Now let's take care of the radios. First switch on all of them. So let's check the frequencies. And I use Navigraph to do so. First frequency, I could configure the ILS of the runway, but honestly, it's just climbing straight out the runway on a runway heading. I don't really need a nav 8 to do so. The thing I need is for the departure procedure, the Quimper VOR, which is 117.8. So let's dial in. 117.8, switch it to active. Next frequency I will need, or let's already configure the radial. 351 is the radial I need to intercept, which is done over here. And this is 360. This should be 350, 351, something like that. Conrad, yeah, that exactly is the VOR I just dialed in. Oh, I forgot to switch back to the instrument panel. I just dialed in radial 351, roughly, which is the radial I have to intercept to go to the northern departure route. So I will configure the next two VORs as well. Let's quickly take a look. I don't need this one at the moment. So next one will be Land's End 114.2. Put it on standby over here, 114.2. Put it on active on nav2, so I can see and check if the VOR already is in range. And after Land's End, I need Stromble VOR. Which is 113.1. So 113.1 on standby on nav2. So the workflow for me is, this is the active frequency on my nav1 device. That is the first frequency I need. This is the Quimper VOR where I intercept radial 351. After that, I want to go to Land's End VOR, which is the standby frequency over here, and also the active frequency on nav2. I have the VOR 1 and 2 needles. That's just the indicator where the VOR is situated from my present position. VOR is the single needle in the middle. VOR2 is the double needle beneath. Hello, my love. Hola. So, when having intercept the radial 351 from Coimper VOR, that single needle VOR1 should point to 180, so straight down. That will mean the VOR is straight behind me. As soon as Lance and VOR comes in reach, the double needle VOR2 should start moving to 0 degrees, 360 degrees, which means the VOR is in range and I'm flying right towards it. And that will be the time I actually will switch from the active frequency to the standby frequency on my nav1 device over here. That will make 114.2, which is Lance and VOR, making the active frequency. And the same here, just push the whole thing, push the whole pipeline one step forward. Because 113.1 is standby on nav2, that will be active nav2, that is Strumble VOR, and then just the same procedure. That's how you hop from VOR to VOR. So it's not really big magic. But it's really much fun to do, because other than the modern airliners where you have an FMC, which you program in the beginning of the flight, where that's pre-flight preparation, and then you hit nav mode, VNav mode. It will take care of your the whole climb, the whole power management, and leveling off and maintaining the route, and you just watch a computer simulating a computer flying an aircraft. So in the old propliners, you have to take care of all the dials. You have to dial in the frequencies of the VORs. You have to take care of the engine management. You have to have a look at temperatures and also have to check navigation. So down here is the nav 1 and 2 DME indication. So Coimper is out of reach from here, of course. And you can switch back and forth between nav 1 and nav 2. And have displayed ground speed and distance and estimated time reaching the VOR if you continue flying like this. So radio check, let's put in whatever transponder code. I somewhat always use this one. So that is prepared. Radio check complete, because I do not communicate with anyone today. It's an offline flight. Mechanics interphone standby. That is not simulated. And we are already ready to actually start the engines. Now the fun part comes. First, switch on the beacon. And starting order is 3421. Engine 3 is the inner on the right side, 4 is the outer on the right side, and 1 and 2. 2 is inboard left, 1 is outboard left. So start selector should be on 3. Then it becomes a bit unrealistic. You have to have the booster pump on, otherwise the engine won't fire. I have to check once I got all my switches and buttons ready if it is possible to follow the realistic procedure. But for now, I follow this approach. I just have to check if I got my shortcuts ready. So 6 is this instrument board, that's correct. 4 is mixture. 2 is engine controls, engine instruments. Okay. So hitting that switch over here, the starter switch, will start turning the propeller. And the co-pilot will monitor and count the blades. And the real procedure is, I think, at 9 blades you switch on ignition. 12 blades you hit, I'm not 100% sure, if needed, boost or prime, one of these. As soon as the engine fires, you turn the mixture lever to auto ridge, so the upper position, and then you have to switch on the booster pump. I think that is the real procedure. It doesn't work like that, so booster pump is on already, and I try to follow the procedure from here as closely as possible. So let's
3, 6, 9, 12.
Oh, messed up. Now I have to wait. The mistake I did was I had it down to the mixture lever already, and I had to push those 2 buttons instead. So you always have to give those relay switches a bit time to reset, and then I can start my second attempt.
3, 6, 9, 12.
Engine fires, mixture to auto ridge, and monitor the engine start. Fuel pressure is alright, oil pressure is coming up. That's the most important thing. If you don't have oil pressure, you have to abort the start. Okay, that's too much. RPM should be roughly 1000, 1100. So let's pull back the throttles a little bit. Okay, this looks good. Okay. Engines successfully started. Next engine is engine number 4. Fuel pressure, oil pressure is rising slowly. Engine 3 stabilized at 1100 RPM, that's fine. Engine 4 is rising. And we've got some minimal fuel flow. Everything looks good so far. I just heard the switches resetting. That was that click. Boost pump is off. Engine number 2.
3, 6, 9, 12.
Fuel pressure number 2 is alright. Oil pressure is coming up. Oil temperatures are coming up as well. That's also important. And RPMs are going up. Okay. And finally, engine number 1.
3, 6, 9, 12.
Fuel pressure. Oil pressure. That engine start seems to have failed. Cut the mixture. I'll reset everything. And have a look at engine number 1. And again.
3, 6, 9, 12.
Fuel pressure, oil pressure. Oh, there we go. And RPM's coming up. Oil pressure should, yeah, now it went off. Oil temperature is rising nicely. Looks good. Yes. Okay, booster pumps are all off. Hydraulic pressure should be between 2600 and 3050. That was that bit on the right side. Down here. Yeah, that looks good. Battery selector, we do not need external power anymore, so ground power light is off. We can disconnect the ground power unit. So here the indication is moderate stress range. That is oil temperature. Remember, the starting order was 3, 4, 2, 1. So the oil temperature is not warm enough, it's rather cold. That's why that cold icon was displayed over here. This will become green, and this one will become green within the next 2 or 3 minutes. Oh, here we go already. As we can monitor here, that light still is on, the oil temperature warning, because engine number 1 still has to heat up quite a bit of oil. So we removed the ground power unit. Gust lock is a security thing, so you cannot push the throttles of engine number 2 and 3 past this stage. That's the gust lock. That prevents applying too much power while on ground. As soon as the engines are started, you remove that lock, which is this lever over here. You see that metal bit just went out of the way. Flight controls. Work. Engine warm-up should be done at roughly 1000 RPMs. So let's pull back engine number 3 and 4 a little bit. Okay, I will not do the full engine run-up, assuming this is not the first flight of the day for the aircraft. I'd say I'll just wait for the oil temperature to reach the green area over here. And the light will go out, and then I guess we are ready for taxi. So let's have a look at taxi. I already have the charts open for Brest Airport. Let's hit the taxi tab and activate our position. So we have that magenta triangle. We are taking off of runway 07 right. Means we are requesting pushback just a little bit. Use taxiway Charlie and then backtrack on the runway, turn around and then take off on runway 07 right on 072 degrees. And that pretty much is everything. Having a look at performance data, shortly after taking off, I will reduce power to METO, maximum except takeoff power, because takeoff power is just kind of all in. Not exactly, but puts quite a lot of stress on the engines. METO is the power setting which still produces lots of power, but not that insane stress level like takeoff power. So METO power on this altitude will be, yeah, it's roughly sea level. We are at, what's temperature? Free air is roughly 30 degrees. That will be 48.5 inches. That is manifold pressure over here. Wait, I have to switch back to Flight Simulator. So free air over here, we are roughly at 30 degrees Celsius outside. So manifold pressure for METO power shortly after takeoff will be around 48.5 inches, which is rather high. Takeoff power, on the other hand, will be 53, which is, yeah, around here, the red line. The red line indicates maximum power without water injection. With water injection, it will be just shy of 60. METO power will be used until speed builds up to somewhat 160 knots indicated airspeed. Until then, the flaps will be retracted, gear will be up, and we will change to climb power. Climb power will be between 40 and 42 inches. Manifold pressure, RPM, the propeller will be reduced to 2400 RPM, which will result in BMEP of roughly 177, somewhere here, for all 4 engines. And while doing so, while taking care of all these settings for the engines and the power settings, I still have to intercept the radial 351 of the Quimper VOR. So yeah, it's a 3-person crew cockpit. But that's the fun part. So let's check if I apply just a little bit of power. Yeah, that's just the oil pressure warning, that's fine. Because those are the most vital things. In radial piston engines, you always have to have enough oil pressure, because otherwise you will lose that film, that oil film between the metal parts, and that will damage the engines. So, a quick look on the outside. Everything around the aircraft should be removed. No pins, no chocks, no stairs, no ground power unit. That looks nice. So, pushback will be straight back and then turn the tail to the right. Let's see if I can do that. So, have the tug connected. Release the parking brake. And start going in reverse. There is a small general aviation aircraft. I do not want to turn into that. And now let's quickly check the directions. If I remember correctly, is this correct? Yeah, this is correct. Nice. Let's check on the outside. Still looking good. As soon as I see that yellow line, I will go straight and end the pushback. Straight. Stop. Parking brake. Get rid of the tug. And now I can close the pushback helper. Now I'm ready for taxi. So, transponder on standby. Get the landing lights going. Now we can see, hopefully, how they actually extend. Yeah, I was right. You see, now they are extended. On both sides. Here we go. Okay, back to the flight deck, and now we can actually start taxiing. Just have to switch on landing lights. Here we go. This, by the way, is a whole different story compared to modern airliners. The landing lights are not bright, and they are dependent on the RPM of the engines. So with lower RPMs, your landing lights are dim. So it's no fun taxiing by night. Tried it. Failed miserably. Okay, holding point. Let's check how today's taxi skills are. Oh, that's not bad. On the yellow line, but a bit short of the holding point. Well, I'm fine with that. So, runway waiting point, flight instruments check. I've got my altitude set. Radial 351. That's correct. I have the DMEs active. Frequencies are in place. Looks good so far. Flaps should be 20. Flap position indicator is over here. So that's 1, 2, 3. 3 notches. 10, 15, 20. Here we go. Cowl flaps should be 4 degrees open. I will... Let's check. Cylinder head temperature is... Oh yeah, it's not too hot. That means I already can close them a little bit. Maybe 6 degrees. Let's quickly check. Yeah, temperature will increase a little bit. Around 200 is fine. That's the sweet spot. Recovery to air is alright. Pitot heat needs to be set, but maximum time on ground is 1 minute, and since we have to backtrack, I will switch on pitot heat later. Actually, I could do the whole runway waiting point checklist after the backtrack, but, well, let's go. Since we hit an active runway, I have to switch on the transponder to report altitude, and that is why I already started doing this checklist. So, release the brakes. Turn left, and at the end of the runway just turn around 180 degrees. You see down here, temperatures cylinder head are roughly at 200 degrees Celsius, which is perfectly fine. Okay, takeoff procedure. I will rotate at around 100 knots, which is pretty much the case always, more or less. Then climb straight on runway heading up to 800 feet above ground level. That means climb to 1,100 feet. And then start turning left to intercept the radial 351 of the Quimper VOR, which already is configured on the instruments. Now that's a rather sharp turn to the left. Okay, slightly overshot the center line, so let's get back to the middle of the runway. However, it's long enough, so it's not too bad. I just burned a few feet. So let's switch on the whole Christmas tree. Landing lights are on already. Position light should be blinking like mad now. Everything's on. I don't use auto feather at the moment because that reacts rather sensitive on power changes. Oh, by the way, that would be the actual takeoff speed. So at roughly 75,000 pounds would be around 100. You see that table? It's if you are really heavy, you start thinking about that. Once you start rotating the aircraft, you rotate rather slowly. You will hit those speeds around the 110 easily. So everything seems to be alright over here. Transponder should be on alt already. It is. Prop full forward. Oh, I know, I touched that broken lever on my throttle quadrant. Have to wait until the blow lights are out. So let's check again. Pitot heat is on. Cowl flaps, now I go to 4 degrees. Looks good. RPMs look good. I'd say we are ready to go. So first 30 inches. Inches, stabilized. Takeoff power is 53. And brakes off. Speed is alive. knots. Rotate. Airborne. Gear up. 120 knots. I already can start retracting flaps. 130 knots. Meter power. Back to 48 inches. And retract flaps. Completely clean up the aircraft. So no flight controls input means let's kick in the autopilot. Gyropilot is on. Main autopilot lever is in. We are climbing out of the runway heading. And VOR run is active. Here is already the indication. So now let's get back to climb power. It was around 42. And dial back the RPMs to roughly 2,400. Now let's turn left to intercept the radial. I'm a bit late, I already overshot the radial slightly. That's not too bad. Can't climb faster because the aircraft is rather light. I already hit 195 knots and the climb speed should be roughly 170 knots. So let's point that nose a little bit up. So 330-320. Let's get the aircraft straight. Well, 315. Just to intercept the radial. Thank you, Conrad. It was a bit shaky, but well, I think it was somewhat safe. I think I did the reduce to meter power a bit early, but yeah, I was a bit behind the aircraft. Okay, now let's turn left before overshooting again into the other direction. Oop. Not here. Have to turn right. passengers. So now let's go to 360 degrees. So you see the VOR1 needle pointing to the Quimper VOR, and Land's End already is active. That's VOR2. RPMs are a bit high. Let's get back to 2,400. And I should be at somewhat 40 inches. Okay, I'm a bit shy of 37, 38. So let's add a little bit. Okay, 41 DME of the Quimper VOR. That means we reached that Arnav waypoint. Therefore, it's fine to just turn left a little bit to have the Land's End VOR straight in front of us. Go. And switch the active frequencies. That's Land's End. That's Strumble. Let's dial in Strumble right away. 113.10. And I will dial in Baldonel. Oh no, that's Baldonel. Is it? Strumble, Strumble, that must be Baldonel later. Now let's check the engines. That's 200 degrees Celsius, that's fine. Means I can't close the cowl flaps one notch. 3 degrees. And the other thing is carburetor air. That is getting a little bit cold, so let's get it a bit warmer. Somewhere here. Yeah, you see the temperature already is rising. To keep it in the green range. So since we are climbing, the air gets thinner and you have to add more throttle to maintain manifold pressure of roughly 38 inches. Okay, overturn a little bit. Oh no, I didn't. I'm completely on course because VOR1 is already Land's End. You see 93 nautical miles DME, decreasing, takes us about 27 minutes to reach. So now I can dial in the appropriate radial, so we can activate the localizer mode, which will take care of holding that course on our way to Land's End VOR. turned left because we are right on this radial, and then we'll intercept the radial accordingly. Have to add a bit more power. Okay, flight level 100. That means landing lights will go off. Here we go. And retract. I did not care about transition level. So let's just dial in standard 1013. Kind of should be around here. And cruise altitude, cruise level will be 120. Means I will leave the superchargers on low. And see, now the speed is exactly climb speed at 1000 feet per minute. Flight level 110, 1000 feet to go. So let's get ready to level off. Dropping the nose little by little. Okay, and altitude hold. I forgot about that. The PMDG DC-6 does not like the standardized pressure. That's why it started sinking. So just leave the altimeter set to local QNH and you're fine. Other than that, everything seems to be alright. Now let's switch to cruise power. Okay, we are at 12,000 feet. Outside temperature is somewhat around 0 degrees Celsius. That will leave us at 30.7 inches manifold pressure. roughly here. Now let's add a little bit because I have to change the mixture to auto lean. And RPMs need to go down a little bit as well. So mixture to auto lean. Some fine tuning. Oh, 30.7. This looks good, and now get the RPMs to 2100. Okay, a little bit shy of 2100, but I think that's okay. BMEP should be at 135. It's a bit high. Just a bit back on the throttles. Okay, that looks better. So RPMs are fine. Fuel flow should be 454 pounds per hour. 54, yeah, that looks reasonable. Temperatures. I should close the cowl flaps a little bit more because we are below 200. So let's go to -2. And also carburetor air, that's well within range. Other than that, everything seems to be fine. Let's check the engine stress levels. Everything is green. Nice. And now let's check, because we have 15 minutes until we reach Land's End. Now it's tilted a little bit. Here we go. Okay, apart from the chap that didn't recover, the setup seems to work beautifully. Maybe I can reconnect the chat. Seems to be alright. Actually, I'd like to have the chat in a separate window. So let's pop out the chat window from the browser. Here we go. Now I have a proper chat window. Well, I already had, but yeah, it was not on my screen. I got it here on my smartphone. So let's quickly check frequencies on Navigraph charts. Let's get rid of the departure information. That already is done. So I already have Strumble VOR configured. That was 113.1, which is the first one after Land's End. And after that, it will be Baldonnel, which is 115.8. So I'm dialing in 115.8 as my standby frequency on nav2. One 115.8. Here we go. Quickly checking temperatures. 200 all the way. Carb air could be a little bit warmer, but I think it's okay. Yeah, all green. Oh, that's interesting. I forgot to connect my Sim Toolkit Pro to the flight simulator, so I do not have my overlay with the info. Let's quickly do so. And now there should be some more info. Refresh the overlay. Here we go. So my setup indeed is working, but I have to remember activating everything. So that VOR only navigation is just the first part of a much bigger project. The first thing I did with DC-6 was I grabbed the Red Bull livery, because that is where I used to work. I did IT support on site at the two hangars in Salzburg. And I still have photos of the DC-6 when I was allowed to be in the flight deck and take some shots when the aircraft was in maintenance at the hangar. Fantastic experience, and therefore the first thing I did also in FSX and FS 2004, FS9, I always had a DC-6 with the Red Bull livery. Then I found out that Japan Airlines used to fly DC-6B. Then I joined the JAL Virtual and started investigating and researching how things were done back in the days. And the biggest thing I stumbled across was they did Pacific routes with the DC-6, which is somewhat impossible doing VOR navigation only because there are no VORs. So I started researching how they actually did that. And then I discovered they did a mixture of dead reckoning, means we know the wind is somewhat like this, our speed should be somewhat like this, and we are heading somewhere that course. The other part of navigation was celestial navigation. So they had a four person crew in the flight deck. They had the pilot flying, the co-pilot, the flight engineer, and the navigator. And the navigator actually used a built-in sextant connected to the aircraft, and they had the sun, moon, or certain stars as their fixes, as their orientation points. And a few days ago I discovered there is a mod for Microsoft Flight Simulator simulating that celestial navigation stuff. So I already downloaded the mod and started watching tutorials, and I feel my brain is going to explode because that is something I never thought about, how to use that nautical almanac where all the degrees and numbers are, how you should interpret and use your measurements you get from the simulated sextant. And that is how they actually navigated across the Pacific and also across the Atlantic. And one day I definitely want to do that big Japan Airlines flight with the DC-6 like they did in the 60s, going from Tokyo Haneda to Wake Island, from there to Honolulu, and from there to San Francisco. That was the big Pacific route done by Japan Airlines with the DC-6. With that mod, with the celestial navigation, it is possible to do it some kind of like it has been done back in the days. So let me quickly check. VOR2 seems to be active. That should already be Strumble VOR. Let's check. Turn over to VOR2. That's correct. Distance is decreasing, and we should turn slightly to the right to change over to that VOR. Conrad, they still do that kind of navigation, and still there are skippers who use just let me think, the sextant, a clock, the nautical almanac, and a map. You can actually get your position to less than 1 nautical mile precise, which is absolutely amazing. You need lots of experience to do so, of course, but it is doable, which is what I find is incredibly fascinating. How you do all that stuff without GPS. There are still skippers doing navigation across the oceans with just the old tools. So 4 minutes to Land's End. Just want to check on Navigraph charts if everything is alright. So slight right turn to Strumble is correct. So the changes to my setup basically are I played around with the overlay coming from Sim Toolkit Pro, which I just activated because I forgot it. The next thing is I finally got a power adapter from my Nikon Z50 mirrorless camera, so I do not have to care about batteries anymore. I placed my digital music stand right of my table and put the chat window on that screen. And also I put one of the LED lights on top of my monitor, so I have better lighting. And the biggest thing for me is I played around with some audio tools on my gaming PC, where all the audio signals are mixed. And I followed a tutorial on YouTube getting automatic compression going. That means as soon as there are input signals on my talking microphone, the in-game sound will be compressed. That means it will be the volume will be reduced automatically. So far, I think it works quite nicely, because that was one of the big struggles. Either the in-game sound were way too loud, or you didn't hear those lovely engines. So 2 minutes to go to Land's End. That usually is when I switch back to gyro pilot. So I just maintain level flight. And then I already can dial in an appropriate radial to head into Strumble VR direction. Roughly, I'd say 1516. Let's say 16. So 2 miles to go, 1 minute. That is fine. Let's switch VORs. Already close to the radial inbound Strumble. And of course Baldwinel is, at least the DME information already is there. Direction doesn't work yet. Radial is moving in. Needle is moving in. So this is Strumble, this is Baldwinel, and after Baldwinel it's already runway 16 ILS. Quickly check frequency. Approach ILS 16 will be 111.5. 1.5. Let's check navigation. Okay, we are almost there. So let's start turning right. To intercept radial, what did I say? 016, kind of. Looks good, and now let's reactivate localizer mode. So far, things look really nice. So let's have a look at descent. Navigraph. This already is the approach plate of ILS 16 into Dublin. Let's see if I see some distance. No, I don't. Well, either way. I think it's shown in Sim Toolkit Pro, so let's check there. Indeed, I am between Land's End and Strumbleviewer. To Baldonnel it will be 94 nautical miles. So shortly after Strumbleviewer is what Sim Toolkit Pro expects to be top of descent. I think I'm somewhat okay with it, so let me quickly get a cheat sheet. Here we are. So the cheat sheet is just for a very basic formula how to calculate the top of descent. So 5 nautical miles per 1000 feet I have to descend. And then an additional 15 nautical miles for deceleration. Hey Arira, welcome, good to see you. So let's check the approach table again. Navigraph. Approach ILS 16. So the initial approach altitude is 3000 feet. We are descending from 12,000 feet. So we have to get rid of 9,000 feet. So 9 times 5 nautical miles is 45 nautical miles, plus 15 nautical miles is 60 nautical miles. And to be on the safe side, I'd say I calculate 60 miles to Baldonel to start descending. I just have to remember to do so. 60 miles to Baldonel. So let's check 22 minutes into Strumble VOR. And Baldonel obviously is not... Oh, here's active already. 190 nautical miles. Coastline. Engines are happy. Fuel flow looks good. Fuel capacity 1,400 in each tank. That's nice. Temperatures 200 degrees, all four engines, cylinder head, and carburetor air is alright as well. Yeah, absolutely happy with this. And I forgot to switch back to the appropriate scene. Now I'll show you again quickly. We are on track. Slightly off track, but autopilot is in, localizer mode is active, so it will, if it gets too bad over here, it will intercept that radial again. If not, I will switch to gyropilot and do it somewhat manually. Nothing to worry about. So temperatures, all four engines, cylinder head is around 200 degrees Celsius, which is exactly where it should be. Carb air is alright, it is within the green range. Oil temperature, oil pressure is fine, fuel pressure is fine. Fuel flow looks reasonable. Fuel capacity up here, that's those 1,400 pounds each main tank. Arira, exactly. Imagine if you had to do the whole checklist before even starting your car. Having the walk around your car, checking everything on the outside of your car, then hop into your car, check all the instruments, check if everything matches, and then request permission to start the engine. Or at least request permission to start moving the car. Because when doing VFR you don't need permission to start your engine, but you need permission to start taxiing. So 17 minutes into Strumble, and after Strumble, from Strumble to Baldonel, it will be a slight turn to the left. Okay, there's no alarm. Oh, there is. But that still is England. Not Ireland yet. Actually, there's one thing I'm not really happy with. That old every time fail coffee. Completely forgot I had a cup of coffee. Weather seems to be nice. Let's hope it won't be all covered in clouds and fog when descending into Dublin. Oh, and descending 9,000 feet from 12,000 feet down to 3,000 feet, initial approach altitude, will take about 9 minutes. And after that, slowing down will take another roughly 5 minutes-ish. Or even more. So the thing during descent is you do not pull back power like in a jet. You just point down the nose and try to hit 1,000 feet per minute descent rate. And then you just stay on cruise power until you come close to your target altitude, which in my case is 3,000 feet. Then you reduce power and start slowing down the aircraft. Because during descent we will be way above 200 knots, more like 230. Now we are at a setting of 135 BMEP. That's those 4 dials on top. That's the overall power setting. It's a combined value between manifold pressure, RPM, and I think there is something on top of that. I always have to look up what the actual meaning is. But you usually set your power looking at BMEP. So you dial back to somewhat 90 BMEP, and then the aircraft starts slowing down. And then from about 160, 168, you start deploying flaps. And then you start decelerating until you hit flaps 20, and that should set you at roughly 140 knots. And then we should be ready to start turning into Dublin, which is a really big 180 degrees turn until we intercept the ILS. then it's time to decelerate even more by deploying more flaps until roughly flaps 40 and lowering the gear. And then you just try to stay on the glide slope. Well, on the localizer and the glide slope. Usually on my prior flights I always tend to descend much too late, which is not easy to fix. Because then you need higher descent rate and you have to bleed off much more speed. And that will lead to everything but a stabilized approach. Check the tablet, everything should be green. It is. And already 10 minutes into Strumble VR. And on the overlay you can see estimated 33-ish minutes until touchdown. We are slowly drifting off track, so I will get back to gyropilot mode and turn the aircraft right to get back. Onto track. Check how much degrees the left turn should be after Strumble. So, Strumble to Baldonel. It's somewhat 40 degrees. Moving in again. But Baldonel is not in reach yet. So I guess I just overfly Strumble and then turn left by roughly 40 degrees. Let's check in Sim Toolkit Pro what the initial heading should be. Track in would be 327. bit more than 40. Needle is centering nicely. Since we're coming closer to the VOR, I already can start turning left. Gyropilot, which is correct. Now let's dial in 327. Something like this. That was the broken lever on my throttle quadrant. I just touched it, and that still is connected to the prop pitch axis. Now I found the spot where it's not interfering. I have to remove that assignment. Okay, 13 nautical miles to Strumble. And the left turn towards Baldonel. Conrad, if I had auto feather active, it would have kicked in immediately, and now I would have to get auto feather deactivated and reapply the proper pitch. So that is one of the reasons why I don't have auto feather active at the moment. And luckily I was fast enough to readjust the pitch, so still everything is green, and over here there's no damage. But that exactly is what you never want to do. Rapidly changing prop pitch, therefore having huge jumps back and forth in regards of RPM and stress on the engines. Six miles to go. Start turning left at somewhat 2 miles. Oh yeah, Conrad, that's right. Usually that's an indication of something going wrong. Especially with radial engines, if you hear that sudden drop, that is something you don't want to hear. Okay, start turning left. Overflying Strumble. Turning to somewhat 315 degrees, because I want to recapture that radial. Now not there yet. Radial is moving in. Correction to 327 degrees will be a minor one. Roughly 10 degrees. So I'll just change over to localizer mode and let the autopilot intercept the radial. So from Strumble VR to Baldonel is roughly 90 nautical miles, if I remember correctly. That means 30 miles out of Strumble VR I will start the descent. Localizer mode active means the autopilot should start intercepting the radio. Well, or not. Not in reach. Let me quickly check distance. Yes. Strumble VOR to Baldonel VOR is about 94 nautical miles. Oh no, not again. Again, touch that lever. Okay, back to 2100 RPM. Okay, before the next flight I definitely remove that assignment and hopefully get my button box ready, because then the whole quadrilateral and well, the throttle quadrant will go away with that broken lever. The pot is somewhat broken. So I just wait for 30 nautical miles distance from Strumble. The estimated time is not really correct because that does not, I think it does not take into account I do a big turn into the ILS. But actually we can check. Let's see, Sim Toolkit Pro. No, it draws a rather straight line from Baldonel to Dublin. So it does not... It doesn't take that turn into account. Okay, that pot is seriously broken. But I don't want to delete the assignment during the flight, because in my experience if you change controls during flight it's likely that the simulator crashes to desktop. Happened to me before. So I just take care of not touching that lever, not even coming close. Went a bit away from the radio. So turning back to 320 roughly. Outside view. Yeah, let me quickly configure the descent. pointing the nose down to 1000 feet per minute descent rate. Here we go. Let's check outside. Let me quickly reset the view because it's not tilted down that much. So here we go. That's outside view. And I think we can see... yeah. That's Ireland already. On the right we should see English coastline. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, sky is beautiful. And it's perfect weather. It's all blue sky. So that means I have no excuses when messing up the landing. It's not the visibility. So... pointing down the nose a little bit. Oh, VOR2 just became active. That's Baldonel. Let's check. Yes. Here we go. So let's switch VORs. I am on gyropilot. That means it's safe to switch frequencies. That's Dublin ILS. I'll dial in that one here right away. 50. What? Wrong frequency? I think so. Because it's increasing. 115. Oh yeah. One, 5. Decimal 8. Here we go. That's the correct one. Okay, let's get that centered. See if that mode... oh, this just doesn't work. Okay, no localizer mode at the moment. Maybe I somewhat broke it somehow. What's this? I forgot to pull back the power during descent because the air gets thicker. therefore the power increases. So you always have to remember pulling back the throttles. And the cowl flaps need to be opened again. Temperatures should drop again. Open them even more to 6 degrees. Yeah, that looks good. 200 incoming. That is a bit high, so I can just carb heat. Okay, looks good. 200 looks good. And go back with the power again. Power settings should be okay, I even can go down with the RPMs to 1900. And back to 34. Okay, our settings are nice. 5,000 feet. 2,000 feet to go. Okay, cylinder head temperature is a bit cold. Let's check. Yeah, well below 200. So let's close. Leave them at 2 degrees. (4,200 feet). feet. And start leveling off. So get back to somewhat 90 VMEP. And hold altitude. First level off again with trim. Well, with gyropilot controls. And hold. Okay. .26 inches. I'm a bit below, but that's okay. Speed is bleeding off nicely. Let's take care of the landing lights. Green again. Yeah, temperatures are fine. That's a bit cold. Looks good. Outside temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. Don't need windshield heat anymore. Yeah, Conrad, Wicklow Mountains are beautiful. Two minutes to Baldwinell. Maybe I should use the Dublin VOR for orientation as well. That would be 114.9er. Okay, overflying Baldwinell VOR. Let's get the flaps down to 20 degrees. should leave us with approximately 140 knots in level flight. Oh, it's not Dublin VOR. Dublin VOR is north of the airport. I need Collinstown. So let's quickly fix that. While speed is bleeding off. So that's 111.2. 1.2. Next will be the actual ILS 111.5. Here we go. Okay, 140 knots. That's exactly what I wanted. That's Collinstown VOR. Looks good. 159er is landing course. So I am on gyroplane still. Let's start turning right in a big right turn and dial in 159er. Maybe even a bit early with this turn. Having a look at the approach plate again. Actually, Dublin VOR was not that bad. So let's quickly check the approach distance. The ILS starts at 8.7 nautical miles from the localizer. Dublin VOR is 4.1 nautical miles and it is on the localizer. So let's get back to Dublin VOR. Oh, I remember Collinstown was a different approach. So Dublin is 114.9er. 114.9. Here we go. Okay. So we are somewhat abeam Dublin VOR. So lining up parallel to the runway and the ILS. Okay, ILS is in reach. So now let's start turning right, slowly. So initial approach is done. Approach. Get a little bit more power. Just around 100. Okay, I'm about 20 degrees, a bit more, 30, off track. I'm just waiting for the localizer to move in. So 130 knots, I can lower the gear already. That's good. Get propeller pitch up again. just disconnected the autopilot. Okay, runway in sight. Flaps at 40 degrees, slightly left of the localizer. Falling a bit below the glide slope. Going back to flaps 30 because I'm a little bit slow. Okay, now overflying Dublin VOR. Okay, lost quite a bit of lift. Oh, now I see. Just retracted the flaps fully. Okay, have to check that switch as well. Back to flaps 40. Well above the glide path. Full flaps. Pulling back the power to a bit above 60 BMEP. yours. Turn off the runway. Okay, flaps up. Pitot heat off. Cow flaps wide open. Forgot to get the mixture back to auto rich. Those need to go. Okay. Cowl flaps open, flaps up, full forward. And transponder can go off. On standby. So let's find Conrad. I tried to get back on the glide slope by retracting the flaps one notch, just one notch, but for some reason they were retracted completely, which was not what I planned. I was wondering why the speed went up like mad, and I lost quite a bit of altitude. That was absolutely not what I expected, because usually in a perfect approach you stay on flaps 40 and then you just fly down to the runway. And once you find yourself below or above the glide slope, you just adjust the flaps. So I found myself being slightly below the glide slope, already being on the slower side. So I didn't want to add more trim. So I wanted to retract the flaps from 40 to 30 degrees, but for some reason the flaps went up completely. So now I'm finding whatever parking spot. I think if I just go straight and maybe a bit on the right side, there should be some ramp parking stands. Because here those are the airline gates. Oh, Fireball, it was nice to have you. Thank you for watching. Yes, community here is absolutely nice. So let's see, I think, having watched the yellow lines, I'm in the wrong direction on this taxiway maybe, but who cares? So let's turn left here. Oh yeah, Discord can be really spammy depending on which servers you are on and how many of them. Okay, I think this should be good. Parking brake is set. Shut down the aircraft. Mix. All cut off. Fuel tanks off. Ignition. All off. Inverters off. Generators off. Oh, that was too much. Call for ground power. And get the doors open. Then gust lock. Switch off all the radios. And everything here as well. Looks good. Landing lights. Oh, I forgot temperature control for the passengers. And reset flight. Well, cabin pressurization. to 0. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Back to plane battery and everything off. So in theory, the needles should, yeah, they did already drop. So, aircraft successfully secured and shut down. And I didn't ruin the engines. Okay. Happy with that. Happy with the flight. And that's it for today. Thank you for being here. And since I want to do more flying, maybe every 2 weeks even, I mean online, and streaming and testing new equipment, because I'm still working on my big button box to have the 4 engines controllable separately, 4 throttles, and also a working prop pitch axis, and the gyro pilot and fuel tank controls, and some more switches. That will make things much easier. But it will eat up more space on my desk, so I have to reorganize things. Let me quickly check what the landing rate in SimToolkit Pro was. Okay, it was touchdown at 287 feet per minute sync rate. It's not really good, but it's also not bad. It is well in the ranges that are acceptable. Usually you say you do not want to grease every landing, because that also means you are not making secure contact to the runway. So anything between 200 and 400 is considered to be a good landing. Arira, we landed in Dublin. Let me see if I can. Well, Dublin Airport is a bit outside of the city. Well, you can't really recognize. So that's just above the airport. That's where we are. So, from my side, I'll call it a day. Thank you very much for spending time with me in that lovely aircraft on that flight. It was less chaotic than expected, but I again managed to mess up the approach. It was usually I'd have to go. Usually I'd have to do a go around when retracting the flaps all the way accidentally. So next time, hopefully it will get better and better. So thank you again, and see you all soon. Goodbye, have a nice Sunday.